Everyone thinks professional basketball money comes from contracts, but that's not even the real game anymore. There's a second economy running quietly in the background, built on attention, timing, and who you stand next to. And right now, one player just cracked the code without being the top scorer or the face of the league. She made one smart move, aligned herself with the biggest rising star, and overnight turned visibility into serious power. And what happened next didn't just change her career. It revealed a blueprint that could reshape how players make money. In the WNBA,
we already know how they give it up, okay? They ambushed and attacked Caitlin Clark. Sophie Cunningham stepped in, and that is part of the reason why we love her. And then it just so happens that at Connecticut, another dirty play happens from Bria Hartley, and it ends Sophie.
Because once you understand how this hidden system works, you start to realize it's not about being the best on the court. It's about being impossible to ignore. If you really break it down. This hidden system runs on one simple idea: proximity creates power, not talent alone, not stats, not even championships, but visibility. And right now, no one in the league brings more eyes than Caitlin Clark. Every game she plays turns into an event. Every clip spreads across social media, and every moment gets watched, analyzed, and shared by millions. That kind of attention is rare, and more importantly, it's contagious. Anyone close to it starts getting pulled into the spotlight too.
The fever ended, and with the WNBA reaching a new collective bargaining agreement in mid-March, Cunningham is in line for a massive pay raise when free agency begins next month. That's definitely something you got to pay attention to, because Sophie Cunningham is going to get a back.
And that's exactly what Sophie Cunningham understood early. She didn't walk into the Indiana Fever trying to outshine the star. She recognized that being near the center of attention was more valuable than fighting for it. And instead of competing for the spotlight, she positioned herself right beside it, where the real opportunities quietly begin. What makes this even more interesting is that Sophie Cunningham didn't approach this like a typical athlete chasing stats. She treated it like a strategy. Instead of forcing shots or trying to become the main option, she leaned fully into her role and focused on doing the small things that don't always show up on the scoreboard but get noticed by fans watching closely. And then came the moment that changed everything. During a heated matchup against the Connecticut Sun, things got physical around Caitlin Clark, and reports suggest the defense crossed the line trying to slow her down.
It is almost that time for March Madness. We are so excited to be teaming up with Marriott Bondboy for Live from the Bracket. It is a 4-episode limited series edition of our podcast, Show Me Something.
It's going to be sick. We're going to talk to special guests about all things travel, all things basketball.
That's when Cunningham stepped in without hesitation. She didn't wait, didn't second guess. It was immediate, and in that split second, millions of viewers saw something real: loyalty, intensity, and a willingness to protect her teammate, no matter the cost. It wasn't just a basketball play anymore. It became a moment people connected with, shared, and talked about everywhere. That single moment didn't just stay on the court, it exploded online. Almost instantly, clips of Sophie Cunningham stepping in for Caitlin Clark started circulating everywhere, and fans couldn't get enough of it. People weren't just watching, they were reacting, defending her, praising her, turning her into a symbol of loyalty overnight. Her follower count began climbing fast. Engagement went through the roof, and suddenly she wasn't just a role player anymore. She was a personality people felt connected to. And in today's world, that kind of connection is everything, because once fans care about you, brands start paying attention, opportunities start showing up, and what used to be just a moment in a game quietly transforms into something much bigger, a gateway into an entirely different level of influence and income. And the timing of all this couldn't have been more perfect. Just as Sophie Cunningham was gaining momentum online, her contract situation was reaching a turning point. She had been playing on a relatively small deal, the kind that doesn't reflect the kind of attention and impact she was suddenly generating. But now, everything had changed. With a new wave of visibility and a growing fan base behind her, she wasn't just another player negotiating a contract. She was bringing real value off the court. At the same time, the WNBA was entering a new financial phase, with changes that increased team spending power and opened the door for bigger deals. So instead of waiting quietly for an offer, Cunningham stepped into negotiations with leverage, knowing that her influence now extended far beyond the game itself. But instead of relying only on what the Indiana Fever might offer, Sophie Cunningham made a move that completely changed the game. She went outside the league and tapped into corporate money. As her popularity kept rising, brands started to notice, and one of the biggest came from Marriott Bonvoy. What looked like a simple partnership was actually something much bigger. A fully backed media project connected to one of the most watched events in basketball season. Suddenly, she wasn't just earning as a player, she was building a presence in media, travel, and entertainment. All at once. And that's where the real shift happens. Because once a player starts making money beyond their team contract, they're no longer limited by salary caps. They're operating in a completely different league financially, where visibility and brand power can outweigh performance alone. And that's where things start to get complicated for the rest of the league. Because once the path becomes visible, it stops being unique, it becomes repeatable. Other players in the WNBA are now watching exactly how fast attention can turn into opportunity. And many of them are entering free agency with a completely different mindset. It's no longer just about winning games or fitting into systems, it's about building a personal brand while still playing the game. That shift puts pressure on teams like the Indiana Fever, who now have to think beyond basketball skills and start asking a harder question. Who is here to compete? And who is here to capitalize on the spotlight? And when those two goals collide, even a strong locker room can start to feel like a business negotiation happening in real time. At the same time, the financial pressure behind the scenes is getting harder to ignore. The Indiana Fever are no longer just building around one moment, they're trying to manage an entire future, with major contracts potentially coming for stars like Caitlin Clark and Aaliyah Boston. Every additional decision becomes a balancing act. If a player like Sophie Cunningham proves valuable both on the court and as a brand, her price naturally rises, but paying that price means sacrificing flexibility elsewhere. And that's the real tension no one talks about. Every roster spot now has two values attached to it: basketball value and business value. And sometimes those numbers don't match. So what looks like a simple contract decision on the surface is actually a high-stakes calculation that could shape the team's entire future. And this is where the bigger picture starts to come into focus. What's happening with Sophie Cunningham isn't just an individual success story, it's a signal change for the entire WNBA. Players are starting to realize that influence off the court can shift their entire career trajectory just as much as performance on it. Meanwhile, teams like the Indiana Fever are being forced to evolve in real time, now evaluating players not only for how they fit into a system, but for how they affect attention, engagement, and long-term brand growth. And as this new reality settles in, one thing becomes clear: basketball is still the game, but the business around it is no longer playing by the old rules. And once that reality sets in, there's no going back. The WNBA is now in a phase where every standout moment, every viral clip, and every emotional storyline can instantly translate into real financial leverage. Players like Caitlin Clark are already drawing massive audiences that shift how teams are viewed, marketed, and even valued. And when someone like Sophie Cunningham steps into that spotlight, even indirectly, it shows how quickly roles inside a team can expand beyond the court. For the Indiana Fever, this creates a new kind of pressure where success isn't just measured in wins and losses anymore, but in how effectively they manage attention, chemistry, and opportunity all at the same time. And that leads to the most important question of all: where does this actually go from here? Because what's unfolding around the Indiana Fever is bigger than one player or one contract situation. It's a test of how a modern franchise survives in an era where attention moves faster than strategy, with stars like Caitlin Clark driving massive visibility, and players like Sophie Cunningham proving how quickly that attention can be converted into real-world value. Every decision the front office makes becomes amplified. One signing can boost the brand, one mistake can shift the entire balance. And in a league like the WNBA, where growth is accelerating fast, the teams that understand this shift early won't just build better rosters, they'll build stronger empires around the game itself. And that's where everything ultimately comes together. What started as a story about one player's rise inside the WNBA slowly turns into something much bigger. Look at how modern basketball is no longer just decided on the court. It's shaped by attention, timing, relationships, and the ability to turn moments into momentum. For the Indiana Fever, the challenge moving forward isn't just building a winning roster around stars like Caitlin Clark and Aaliyah Boston, it's understanding how every player, including someone like Sophie Cunningham, fits into a world where influence matters almost as much as performance. Because in this new era, the real currency isn't just points, rebounds, or contracts. It's visibility, it's attention, and it's knowing exactly how to use both before the moment disappears. And the teams that understand that first won't just keep up with the league, they'll redefine it.